Patriots Beat podcast. I'm Ryan Spagnoli. As always, joined with me, my good friend Alex Barth of 98.5, the Sports Hub. Alex, what's going on? How we doing? Hopefully your day is going a lot better than my day or night yesterday is going. It went.
Yeah, so you had a little hockey injury there. I don't think we need to show it on camera.
It's pretty gross. It's pretty gross, Alex. I split the elbow open. The bone was sticking out, but I finished the game. Had no idea. Hashtag, what's it? Please like my sport or something people used to
something
say
like that. And a trooper back on the show today. So right, we love to see that. We will.
Couple caffeine. Caffeine helped, but I'm doing good. I'm here. My voice still works. That's good for us, maybe not for others, but we'll roll with it. But anyways, a lot has changed.
And just real quick to apologize to everybody in the chat. I don't know why it said 4:15 on the schedule. This was always a 5:00 show. So apologize to people who've been waiting for 45 minutes.
Right. And yeah, I mean, like I said, this is not a lot has changed. I think it'll be kind of a slower show, right? We'll break down the practice squad. I guess we'll take it from there. And then we'll do a little bit of a Q&A. Just any questions that arise, right? Next week, we'll get into game week. We'll be on more of a schedule. It's kind of that dry period between week one once they got rid of that, that fourth preseason game. But anyways, a lot has changed, I think, in a good way for the Patriots, right? I think the last time we talked, little Jordan Humphrey, right? We were kind of surprised with that. What would happen? We thought he'd be gone. Yeah. Trey Nixon, right? We were kind of talking. I guess we can start there with those two guys, right? We were kind of coming away with it to finish the show. Hey, if you can get one of these guys back, I think you're in a pretty good situation in terms of your depth, right? Wilkerson went on IR late that night, so we were kind of assuming he'd get pushed through and then IR'd and they'd make room for him. But his season's done. Trey Nixon and Lil Jordan Humphrey make it onto the practice squad. You assume at least one of those guys, probably Humphrey, is elevated. And I haven't been on my phone much. Did Thornton officially go on IR yet?
Nope. We're still waiting on that one. And I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's doing better than we think. Although based on what all the Twitter doctors were saying about his surgery, it would be kind of surprising if he doesn't get put on IR, because I think just the recovery time from that would hold him out for the first 4 weeks. It's about after that, how fast does he recover? I can run through the practice squad real quick here. We think so. It's kind of been a work in progress. I've counted like 19 potential practice squad players when they only have 16 spots. So there's might be some moves that have been made that we don't know about yet. We've got Kevin Harris, JJ Taylor's the running backs, Trey Nixon, Lil Jordan Humphrey. They signed Lynn Bowden earlier today.
We'll get into him because I loved him coming out.
I want to talk about that one for sure. Matt Sokol, Jalen Weidermeyer as tight ends, Cody Rusi, James Ferentz, Bill Murray. And then they signed another guy today whose name is escaping me right now, but they added another, I'll pull that up, another offensive lineman. There was also an offensive lineman yesterday at practice wearing number 68, who we never found out who that was. He wasn't there at practice today, so who knows what that means. So that's the offensive line. If you can't tell, I'm stalling here. The other player is Leroy Watson, an offensive lineman. And then the rest of the practice squad on defense, LeBryan Ray, Jeremiah Farms, Harvey Longy, Cameron McGrone, Terrence Mitchell made it back, and then Brad Hawkins. So that's the practice squad as we know it right now. Of course, there could be some moves here or there.
Right, and I think you come away. I think a lot more people are more happy with their practice squad than their 53-man roster right now. Which
I got some comments like that.
Right, like I did too. Like it's kind of one of those things. It's like all the fan favorites people fell in love with in the preseason that you expect to get signed elsewhere. I guess that's typically what happens, right? Especially when they're coming from the Patriots. And I know times have changed, right? It's a new kind of team and organization from a quarterback perspective, right? Those guys typically leave, but I was shocked. I was, maybe Humphrey wasn't a shot cut, right? We were kind of debating that last time, but I was shocked.
Beto was probably the biggest surprise, but yeah,
I was shocked second that Humphrey made it back. I think that's a shock to a lot of people. With how many teams value receiver depth, and you heard all preseason the Patriots were fielding calls at that position, right? Obviously more about their top guys, right? Bourne, Aguilar, guys like that, but I think teams maybe kind of figured, hey, one of these guys might push these guys off the roster. And obviously this was prior to the Thornton injury. But like you said, I think with teams valuing that position so much in today's game, to get him back and have a key depth piece moving forward, especially with the practice squad elevation rules now changed. It's huge for them. I think that's a big piece for them.
It really is. And, oddly enough, too, not only did they get Humphrey back, and we talk about, I think he's a 53 player caliber wide receiver, and we can add to it even further. They might have gotten a better receiver too in Bowden. And I saw some people tweeting me today when I kind of tweeted that I was excited about Bowden's potential. Why are we doing this? He's not good. I thought LJ Humphrey was the guy. I thought Trey Nixon was the guy. No, Lynn Bowden is he's different. Like, I think the circumstances in which they'd use Humphrey are different than what Bowden's going to do.
Right.
But to get a guy like Bowden at this stage, so I know you said you liked him coming out. I really liked him coming out too. Just a quick little background. So was recruited to Kentucky. He was an option quarterback, a running back and an option quarterback in college. Was recruited to Kentucky, played wide receiver, played it well his first 2 years. I don't know if he started as a true freshman, but he was heavily involved as a true freshman. And then, but he was the Wildcat quarterback too over those 2 years. He did some Wildcat quarterback stuff, also returned kicks, punts, a really good punt returner. His junior year, their top two quarterbacks get hurt. They kind of go to him and say, hey, you want to be our starting quarterback? You've been a Wildcat quarterback. And he did, and he didn't look bad. He didn't, he wasn't going to win the Heisman playing quarterback, but he made some throws. Later in the year, he goes back to wide receiver, kind of was a spark. Kentucky's been good the last couple of years. Bowden's team was kind of the beginning of that because they'd been a punchline for a while there. So, versatile resume. I talked to him today. He said he did speak with the Patriots at the Combine his rookie year. It seemed like he made sense. The Raiders took him in the third round. Then for some reason, and by all accounts, he had a good summer that summer, but the Raiders then traded him for a third round pick.
Before training camp, right?
At the end of training camp.
Right.
Or was it before training camp? I thought it was at the end.
I remember watching that a few years ago going, why, what is, because, right, you saw Sean Wade get traded last year to New England, right? But
so he got
a
traded.
6th-round pick.
So, yeah, he got traded September 5th. So, anyway, he gets traded to the Dolphins, which now all of a sudden, as a rookie, he's got to learn a whole new playbook on the fly. Still managed like a 20-catch season. He didn't play in every game. Most of them. It was a 20-catch season, and then he missed all of last year on IR. So, really fascinating player, upside, versatility. I got to talk to him today for a little bit, and so they assigned him number 80. And I asked him, I said, do you know the history of number 80 with the Patriots? He said, no, he just got the number this morning, but he was actually looking forward to looking it up, after practice and this weekend. I said, well, your coach, Troy Brown, wore it, and he played some corner, played quarterback in a preseason game, was a great kick returner, and Bowden kind of chuckled. He goes, hey, it sounds like me. So I'm not saying Lynn Bowden's going to come in and beat Troy Brown, but fascinating player with upside and potential they brought in.
Yeah, and I wonder too with how the running backs on the roster, and I know Montgomery, he's still not at practice. We're kind of unsure. I would say his week 1 status is up in the air now, right? It's kind of ticking down. I mean, obviously things.
I would say that's fair, yeah.
Right, and I know it's this for Bowden's career, right? You start off in Oakland, like you said, you get traded after training camp, you go to the Dolphins, then you go on IR. Like, not the greatest start to his career, a lot of bad luck. It's another playbook, another team, right? It could be a lot to ask for in a short time frame. But
you brought up Sean Wade. I thought that was a good comp. Look at Sean Wade. He didn't play last year.
Right. But I wonder too, with their running backs on the roster right now, if Montgomery were to go down, I wonder if you can throw a guy like this in the mix, a few weeks down the road, if this injury is more serious. Like, I think this guy's a true Swiss Army knife for them. That they can similar comp to Ty Montgomery, because remember Montgomery was listed as a wide receiver when they signed him, right? That RB/wide receiver. He played a lot more running back in Green Bay, but played more receiver in New Orleans, or maybe vice versa. But anyways, I think a guy like this bodes some versatility. It may be somebody that's more of an upgrade over a JJ Taylor if you're kind of in a pinch in that certain situation.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's a ton of possibility in what he can do. I think they can use him in a number of different ways. And yeah, I don't think we've talked about Taylor, kind of his issues in pass pro. I don't think Kevin Harris is there yet at the passing down back. If they're not there yet with Pierre Strong, Lynn Bowden could be that guy. He hasn't played as much running back as Montgomery has. He really hasn't done it since college. He's mostly just been a wide receiver in the NFL. But if they needed to, I think they could put him there. You're not going to run the ball to him from a single back formation, but if you need him to catch passes out of the backfield, I think he could do that. He's a big guy too. I've never really seen him pass block. I can't speak to his technique, but I mean, he's not a small guy. At the very least, he'd be able to get in the way of a pass rusher.
I think this was it was years in the making. Like you saw this guy, you watched him coming out, that 2020 draft. Everybody knows
Yeah.
the receivers. You kind of looked at this guy like, day 2, late day 2, early day 3 pick makes a ton of sense for the Patriots. I think he probably went a little bit earlier, right? We can always argue about draft boards and how teams value different positions and players, but I looked at this guy like if they're going to take a receiver on day 2, it's a guy like Lynn Bowden. So
Yeah.
to have him come back, it's almost full circle. It's kind of a, we saw this coming years in the making. Like this is a Patriot type of guy, somebody that can help them in the kicking game, like you said, out of the backfield when push comes to shove, and another depth piece at wide receiver. I think the biggest thing with this position, the wide receiver group, and I say it all the time, how far they've came. Like the 2020 Patriots, no disrespect to the guys on the roster, Lynn Bowden's probably their number 3 that year. And now he's a practice squad guy, probably behind Trey Nixon and Lil Jordan Humphrey right now. So you're
again, I don't know if he's behind those two. I don't know if he's behind those two. And I mean, some of it, they're 3 very different receivers. So
yeah,
some of it is, what do you want the guy to do if it's for
and
an
it's
injury,
game plan specific, right?
But,
what do you
But I would say Bowden and Humphrey are comparable. If we were just going to like assign Madden ratings, if we were going to put a number on a scale of 1 to 10 letter grade, I think they'd be pretty close. Now, their skill sets are very different. So, like, let's say Devontae Parker gets hurt, right? I think Lil Jordan Humphrey would be the guy you go to in that situation. If you need to replace Kendrick Bourne, well, then Lynn Bowden makes a lot more sense. So, I think they're kind of, it depends on what the team's looking for. I think that an argument could be made in terms of elevations. And this is a question I've got. Maybe, Ryan, we can dig into this here. Who do we think the practice squad elevations are going to be to start the season? I think both would be candidates to be elevated. It just could depend on the matchup and what the team wants in that given game.
Right. And like I said, it depends on like we know Thornton's not playing. Right. Week 1. What about Montgomery? Right. And you're allowed up to, I always forget, because once COVID happened, they changed the rules with the practice squad.
2 elevations. So you can elevate 2 players per game standard. If you have players with if you had players with COVID, you could elevate more. That's gone. Yeah. So you can elevate 2 players per game. Each player can be elevated up to 3 times in a season. Right. After that, if you want them to play, you have to like actually sign them to the 53.
Right. Okay. So in a pinch early on in the year, I think these 2 guys could potentially push for an opening day roster spot. Like you see too, this initial 53-man roster. Like watch how much it changes from week 1. Like with
watch how much it changes before week 1.
That's what I mean. Before week 1, like the roster they have right now isn't going to be the team on the field. It just things are going to change. Being actives, there'll be guys that come up. So I wonder with his experience being a pro already, and I don't want to say being familiar with New England because he just got here, but I guess familiar from a professional standpoint, it probably makes it a little bit of a smoother transition for a guy like that. But this guy could never play. He could never play. We have no idea, but I'm just happy because, like I said, the comp, a lot of people liked him coming out, and I think this, like I said, was years in the making for a player like this.
You're not saying that like you like the signing because you think he's going to be a massive difference maker, but you just like the potential. You like what could potentially be there. I think that's fair. And in terms of the comfort level, I thought this was interesting, and somebody sort of mentioned it in the chat there, right? They got Devontae Parker from Miami. I saw Bowden talking to Parker a lot in practice today. So, he does have somebody in that room who just made the same switch he's making. So I think that, that could be something that helps him out a little bit. I don't know that it makes or breaks his time in New England, but, at least for his sake, somebody help make him comfortable. So I think that's a good one. You want to try to guess these elevations here before we take questions, or you have any other practice squad thoughts?
No, one more too, just on LeBryan Ray. I thought that was a good one to get him back. I think that was kind of a
surprised.
Right. Another guy, I guess, on the defensive side of the ball, if you're going to be surprised with somebody making it through, LeBryan Ray was one of them. I know when we were kind of wrapping up the show, it kind of looked like he wasn't going to make it just because of, they kept Sam Roberts and DeMarcus Mitchell made it. I know he's more of a special teamer and everything, but like just the roster spots didn't make much sense for a guy like that to make the initial. But happy for a guy. I think that's a guy that, hey, come here. We see the potential. Maybe you're just not ready yet. That's a guy that, could thrive in their practice squad, and you never know, could make an interest this year down this, an impact this year down the stretch if push comes to shove, or, hey, next year, this is a guy we're talking about having one of the best camps. I think the potential with Ray's always been there. I believe he was a 5-star going into Bama.
Yeah, I
struggled
mean,
with injuries and
it's an injury thing, really. He played 31 games in 5 years. If not for the injuries, he's probably a day 2 pick, maybe an early day 3 pick, just the way the draft went this year. But he did not go undrafted based on talent. I can confidently say that.
right. So like I said, that's a guy they have in their building now for another year that like I said, he can certainly has the potential and the talent to make an impact. I think along this front seven, maybe it's just not there yet. It's a crowded group. I think we can agree that's probably their deepest positional group, maybe other than safety. It's tough to find snaps with those guys, especially as an undrafted rookie. So was happy he got through. But um, Alex, if you want to guess these elevations, go ahead. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and then we'll just jump into a Q&A. Like we said, kind of a lighter show today. It's kind of that awkward time where, hey, it's a what's it 10 days 11 days since
Yeah.
week 1 till Sunday. Next week will be more of a game breakdown. It'll feel more like a game week. It'll be kind of a regular season schedule. So just wanted to get one out, get our thoughts out, and we'll take a couple questions. But go ahead, Alex.
So I'm going to, and this is just a guess, and this is assuming that Ty Montgomery can't play because we haven't seen him at practice. I'll do this. All right. If Ty Montgomery can't play, if he can't go, I'm going to say the elevations are JJ Taylor and Terrence Mitchell for week 1. That'll change throughout the year. It'll be different for different games. That's who I have for week 1. If Ty Montgomery's healthy, I'm still going with Terrence Mitchell. And then I am going to add, I don't think it'll be an offensive lineman because they kept 8. So you're not going to dress 9 offensive linemen. You're not going to healthy scratch one to call up another. I'm going to go Harvey Longy. They like him on teams. They like him in the kicking game. So those will be my picks.
I like that too. I'll just base it off.
I think, and let me say, I think Bowden gets elevated at some point, but
it's
1 week and a half in the system, right? He needs some time.
Where's his fit? Really, I don't think he's going to jump into that Ty Montgomery role in the next week and a half.
Yeah, that's late.
I like
that's
the
later
Mitchell
in the
pick. I would say Terrence Mitchell just because it's a veteran guy. I know he's on his 8th team in 9 years, but somebody that's played a lot of football in the league. Somebody that push comes to shove out there, you need an extra corner, somebody that can help you in some spots. I like that. I think that was just kind of a numbers game for him. I know he didn't have the greatest camp or preseason. I think he kind of got outplayed by some younger guys that made him in a spot, but it always makes sense to carry an extra corner. And I like the JJ Taylor one too, right? He's been here. I know he hasn't played much. He hasn't lived up to maybe the potential that we had seen, that electricity he showed in college. But, like I said, third down, kind of a weird situation, 3rd and long. Maybe you can dump it off to him. He can help you pick up, a big chunk play here and there. But I think both of those guys, say it's Taylor, Mitchell, I don't think you see a lot of them in week 1, right? Maybe in some spurts, maybe more Mitchell just because of his experience. But I'd guess those two as well.
Good picks.
All right, so let's kind of get into, I guess, the back half of the show here. I know it's been a crazy week, crazy camp. Camp is finally over, thank God. It's time for real football. I'm not a training camp guy. I know, Barth, you love it. This has been the first year without a quarterback competition. I'm like, wow, this is really, I want some football. So it's been a long couple weeks. The rosters obviously is what it is, the practice squad. So if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. We'll have Alex kind of run it here and share certain ones. And we'll dive into those. I think that's always the best.
Yeah, let's start here. I don't think this is happening at this point.
No,
I feel like if I thought there was a chance it might happen at the beginning of
camp. Is Hightower not coming back, or is he coming in week 2 or 3 for people not watching or listening to podcast form?
It's a good point. This is mainly an audio.
I corrected you for the first time in the show. So
good job. Good pat on the, let's give Ryan a little golf clap there. Everybody listening along at home. Good job. I don't think this is happening. I thought at one point it might, but kind of the last couple days would have been the time. The last few days at camp or the first few days out, they're going to get into the game plan next week in Miami. If he's coming back in week 2 or 3, he's coming back in week 1, right? So at this point, I don't think so. Now, if they get banged up, maybe it's something we revisit again, like Thanksgiving, but you don't come back in week 2 or 3, right? Like either come back in week 1 or you come back midway through the season.
My whole thing with this, because you've heard this floated, right? Because he didn't retire. He was a free agent. He obviously didn't sign. He knows he's on the back. Like if he plays this year, he's got 1 more year of football. Like I don't think this guy's got a lot of years left, right? So why move your family? You're towards the end of your career, right? I think and this is speculation. I'm not reporting anything. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
But I always felt from this situation from the get go was, hey, if you need me, if we're in a pinch and you need me, give me a call, right? Like,
Right.
me, I'll be in shape. I know I can, play the position, but
Interesting.
we're trying to turn this over to a new group of linebackers. But Bentley goes down, McMillan goes down. You kind of lose some guys in the middle there. You kind of have Hightower on speed dial. I think that's the
So,
best way to kind of describe this situation.
so you think they're waiting for him, or sorry, you think he's waiting for them, not they're waiting for him?
I think maybe a little bit of both, if that makes
See,
sense.
because
Like
that's what I think. It's if he called Bill today and said, "Bill, I want to come back,"
he'd
he'd
say
be back,
yes,
right?
yes,
But what you're saying is kind of he's waiting for the Patriots to be like, "Hey, man, we need you. Can you come
right.
back?"
Like maybe like an in between there. Like I don't necessarily like if he came back, what's he gonna give you? Like on a game day,
Well,
like
I,
30 snaps a week. If
but I
like
think that's fine. Like I've said this before, if he comes back, it's not to play his old role. I think that, I really like what they've done at the middle linebacker spot. They've gotten younger, they've gotten more athletic, but we still don't know what they're going to be on the edge. The role Kyle Van Noy played last year, that strong side edge. It's a position he's played before. It's not as
he was good at it
it,
too.
right. He's good at it. It's not a role where speed is necessarily the focus. It's really just being a mean, nasty, physical guy, which he can do, and that he can still do. So, somebody in the comments just said, like, you're hypocritical if you want Hightower back, talking about the linebacker position. I'd like to see him back. I wouldn't necessarily like to see him back in the role he was in last year. I don't think he should be back in the role he was in last year.
I
But I
think
think in
from
like an
from the
early
get go.
down edge role, that could work.
That or like I said, if they're so depleted and you're kind of in the mix of a playoff run, kind of pushing, you're not going to find a linebacker off the street that's going to be able to make an impact that he would in a
Right.
limited capacity, right? Because of his experience here. So that's kind of been from the entire time all summer. I was like, yeah, I think if they need him back, they'll get him. And if he wants to come back, like really, really wants to come back, he'd be back. So that's kind of it on Hightower. One of
Yeah.
the best, I think, most one of the more important pieces, especially on that
Oh,
defense
yeah.
in Dynasty 2.0. Like an absolute monster. Red Jacket, another guy that'll
Who
have his
is
day down there.
who is the best 54 in Patriots history?
Oh my God, man, it's tough.
That might be the toughest. Is there? I don't
Well,
know that there's
Hightower
a
won
tougher.
three, Hightower won three, and Brewski won three.
Right. Is there another number on the roster that's that tough? Where like
Like,
who's the better? Maybe 24, but I still go Law just because he was here longer, right? Over Gilmore
yeah,
or
and
Rivas.
yeah,
I don't
but
know.
like
Maybe
the
there's
thing
another
with
number I'm missing, but yeah,
the
54, man. That's
well,
a
it's
tough one.
crazy. I think both like that's such a hard question. Like we could talk about this for hours. I think like Brewski brought, and this was I was growing up, so I didn't obviously watch football as thoroughly as I did now, but from just watching him growing up, right? Like I felt like maybe Hightower made more of like he made bigger plays and was better in bigger moments, but I think Brewski was like a huge part of building the culture that they have now from a
Sure.
leadership perspective and kind of giving that defense a name. So in both their rights, like they both had such a big role. I think just in different ways, but I mean, you don't win 3 Super Bowls without Dante Hightower. Like
No,
it's
that's true.
insane.
I
Like
You're right. Brewski was like he's a big part of the reason the culture is what it is in New England, but Hightower was as a player might have been
a
better.
winner, like a winner. Oh yeah, I think
Well,
he's a better
Brewski's a
player.
winner too, but I think he was a better
Yeah,
player.
right.
Let's stay at the linebacker position. And again, we're just doing a Q&A now, so keep the questions rolling in. I'll try to get to as many as I can here. What do they see in Jelani Tavai? He's a big physical downhill linebacker. They've always liked that. Bill Belichick praised him as a leader in a leadership role with the team. Matt Patricia drafted him in the second round in 2020. I think that's part of the connection. That's what
Forgot
they
about
see.
that. Yep.
That's what they see. That's why he's still here. And he can play special teams. That's what they see. That's why he's still here.
Yeah, I was trying to like who Shea McClellan, is that who it was? Like kind of in that role where he's like a really good special teamer and they kind of play him in some spurts, maybe a different position, but they both kind of played off ball. I forget what year that was. Was it like
Well, I wonder,
2017?
you're kind of describing like a defensive version of Brandon Bolden.
Yeah, yeah, I think Bolden probably had more of an impact, but you know what I'm saying? Like I'm trying
But
to
it was a year to year. There were some years where Bolden really didn't play offense, and then some years he did. It was kind of based on the roster.
right. I mean I don't think like I know the Carolina game Tavai was getting, snaps with the ones over Mac Wilson. Like, I'd be
Right.
surprised in week 4 if he's playing over guys like that. But as a depth piece, I think he's good in the kicking game, somebody that you can play in spurts. Like, every team needs a guy like that, especially that position. So, I mean, do I agree with it? Do I love the player? Do I think he's going to be a stud? Like, I don't know. No, but I think people are so hung up on this guy. It's like, they got holes elsewhere rather than their, 5th or 6th linebacker.
All right, how about this? Let's look ahead to week 1 a little bit. This might be a bit of a fantasy football question, but we'll take it anyway.
I'm getting ready for the draft, Barth. I got to get going.
That's true. Oh, so that's what we
Big
need to
one.
do. At the end of the show, I think people need to submit the worst possible draft advice for Ryan Spagnoli, and he's going to have to pick one that he has to try to do during his draft. I think we should do that.
I'll share it next show.
No, we'll make sure you share. We'll get the screen grab. We'll throw that on Twitter. Will Damian Harris or Ramondre Stevenson have 100 yards rushing in week 1?
So I don't even think this is like a fantasy question. I think it's a question in general with these two, right? Because Damian's contract's up at the end of the year. They don't like to pay running backs, right? Just from past history. Stevenson kind of is trending towards to being that lead back role. Like, I'm curious how they handle the both of them this year, because if you don't expect Damian Harris to be back, run him wild, give him the ball 25 times a game and let him go. But if you kind of want to do the similar, two back kind of tandem, that two-headed monster that they had last year, which I think works awesome, right? Like, and especially with Ramondre in his second year now, has some footing, has a role for himself. Remember, it took him almost half the year to really find his footing and carve out a role for himself. I think both of these guys, it's going to be similar than last year. Like I said, obviously, if their future plans with Damian are different, it might be different in terms of who gets the ball more. But I think on a weekly basis, you could see these guys trading, 60, 70, 80 yards, depending on who they're playing, in a similar situation as last year.
All right, there's some really good fantasy football advice here. Some people want you to draft Julio Jones. Save that. We're going to do that at the end of the show. It's good. It's good, but save it. There was another question here that I just lost track of. Here it is. So this is a good one. So we did who will get elevated from the practice squad for week 1, but this is actually probably a better question. If and when Tyquan Thornton goes on IR, who gets signed? Who gets added to the 53? Who do you think? And, so they're asking Lil Jordan or Trey Nixon. I don't necessarily think it has to be a receiver. I think I wonder if they sign Terrence Mitchell or LeBryan Ray or maybe one of the running backs and move on and just elevate Lil Jordan or Trey Nixon when they need the receiver.
Right. And like I said, it's not necessarily, Thornton's down, we have to elevate a wide receiver. Like, they still have enough guys in that roster to kind of fill that void. But relatively speaking, for a question standpoint, Lil Jordan Humphrey's probably the better player, but is Trey Nixon more of a style? Like, Tyquan's, they're all three are different, but like, what do you really want out of the guy replacing Thornton? If that's, I guess, the question, right? I'd go Humphrey just because of how well he's looked, and I think it's a guy with pro experience and somebody that can help them in a lot of different ways. But I'd be shocked if, Thornton's on IR, we're just going to, elevate these guys, trading off each week until he's back. Like, it doesn't really work that way.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Or maybe, maybe it's somebody on another roster. There's still a couple players out there that were cut that haven't been signed. I know Justin Bethel was, I really, even with the Instagram post, I thought there was a shot Justin Bethel would be back.
Did he sign in Miami? I thought he signed in Miami.
He just right before we jumped on. Yeah, he signed with the Dolphins. That was the report by Field Yates. So they'll see him week 1, but I don't think it's necessarily just somebody in the practice squad either. Again, we'll go for another 10 minutes here. Keep taking your questions. I'm trying to, we don't need to do a Boston Sportsman today. I'm good on all that. I am excited for the backyard brawl tonight. That's a big one. All right, here's a good question. I
like this one.
What's a realistic stat line for Mac this year?
You go first.
I
was going to pull up his numbers from last year.
So I was about to do the same thing.
It's always the extra game, so it always looks a little bit more inflated because last year was the first, year with that extra game, right? So,
here's Mac last year. In 17 games, obviously 17 starts. He threw the ball 521 times. I didn't realize that. That's a lot. I didn't realize he threw the ball that much.
Oh, but people tell you they don't trust him to throw the ball.
No, the game in Miami is the only game they've ever actually played, Ryan. Or the game in Buffalo is the only game they've ever actually played. Yeah. He completed 67.6% of his passes, 3,800 yards, 22 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, quarterback rating of 92.5, QBR of just over 50, took 28 sacks. So, all
I would
right,
expect that to go up this year with the status of that line.
Let's phrase this let's do this a little differently. Instead of just like predicting the stat line, because we can just pull numbers out of our ass. But let's hopefully whoever, it's a good question. I hope this still, gives you what you were looking for. 521 pass attempts this year, more or less.
More.
I think it might be more. You know what? I think it's gonna be close. We'll make close an option 2. Let's try not to lean on that, but I think it's probably close. 67.6% completion percentage, higher or lower this year.
That's a really good completion percentage as a rookie. Like close to it. How much are you gonna? What are you gonna throw? 70, 72%. Like
I think it could actually be higher if they are gonna do this West Coast stuff. A lot of it is like short passes and yak, right?
So I wouldn't be surprised either way. I think it'd be close. Another way.
I think if they're gonna do the West Coast stuff, he might go over. Now, tied to that, yards per attempt, that might go down.
Right.
I could see his completion percentage going up, but his yards per attempt going down because I think they're going to do some shorter stuff. 7.3 yards per attempt last year, Ryan. Up or down?
Down.
Down. I think it's going down too. Total yards, 3,800. Up or down?
I'll go over. I think that was yeah.
You think he gets 4,000?
I think he has the capability to, especially with the improved talent on the out. Can they pass? Well, this is if they can figure out their offensive line situation,
right?
In a fantasy world, but yeah, I think over. I mean, it took them. We have his first 300-yard game like week 8 or so versus the Jets.
It was a while into the season,
so like I'd assume he'd have more 300-yard games before that this year. So I'll say over.
Over, okay. Touchdowns 22, over under.
Over, and interceptions he'll have under. I think he cleans that up a little bit. He got better as the year went on. A lot of those interceptions too were early in the year, right?
So I think the touchdowns is going to be about the same just because they love running the ball on the goal line. And I think that makes it tricky, right? I think he'll be in position to score more touchdowns, but how many, interceptions I think is probably the same or lower. He cuts down on that, certainly. Touchdown. So last year's 22-13. I'm going to go like 26-10. Just pull those two numbers out of my ass. 26-10 for touchdowns and interceptions. So better.
Good year, man.
Comparable,
really
but better. Well, wait. And then here comes the big question, Ryan. Sacked 28 times last year. So that wasn't even like top 10, top 15 in the league. Joe Burrow was the most sacked quarterback 51 times last season.
Oh
2, 3,
he went
6.
to a Super Bowl. Play away from a Super Bowl. Insane. Might
so
be
Mac is like,
stats.
That's like outside the top 20 in sacks, 28, but it still feels like a lot. So he got sacked more or less times this season than 28.
And that's, what's that, like 1.5 a game, right?
A little less than that.
Less, yeah.
It's 17.
34, yeah, a little
34,
less.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go over. it's just like they've shown nothing to make me feel confident in saying under on that. I think over, and I hope it's under because
right, and that's not necessarily a Mac thing. I know people say sacks are quarterback stat. No. Sometimes they are, not every time. And most of the additional
good enough
ones,
at the line of scrimmage, gets the ball quick enough where most sacks aren't his fault. Put it that way.
Yeah. What else do we got? Jacoby Myers caught his first touchdown last season. Just throw that out there. He actually caught 2. I was so bummed and I called it. They played Cleveland the week before Atlanta, and he still didn't have a touchdown at that point. And I remember thinking before the game, next week before the Cleveland game, Atlanta, he's from there. He's going to score his first touchdown in his hometown. It's going to be sick. And then I was like, oh no, he's going to score today to ruin that narrative. And then he did. But let's see what else we got here. We're doing stats. We can do stats. We didn't do a ton of stats with Evan. He wanted all the advanced stats, which sucked. This is good. Does Devontae Parker break 1,000 yards?
I don't think so. It's very uncommon to see. What was the last guy who went over 1,000 yards? Edelman or Cooks? Cooks since 2017, maybe.
Jacoby got close last year. He was like 9 or 2 years ago. It's like 9 something.
I was gonna say if there's anybody on this roster, I think that comes close to it or can get it. I think it's Jacoby, just because of his usage and how many targets he gets. Kendrick Bourne, maybe if he can start to kind of get his footing back from and catch off where he left off last year. I think Parker's a guy that is certainly going to help them, but I don't really think he's been a big like yard. He's not a yards after catch guy, which I think that's where you get a lot of your yards, especially if you're not just going to be, throwing 90-yard bombs like Justin Herbert, right? Like that's just not them.
All right, so we do have a little bit of Patriots breaking news. Was expected. Tyquan Thornton placed on IR officially, 4 weeks. So we
talked about it, Barth.
It's nothing we didn't know, right?
Yeah, like in that week 5, 6, 7, that kind of area, kind of getting to some lighter teams. Like that's a good area to kind of bring him back. Like week 3's Baltimore, week 4's Green Bay, week 2's Pittsburgh. Like it was tough to, even if they didn't IR him and brought him back, it's tough to get going against those veteran heavy teams. I think that's right around the area where, hey, we can plug him in and kind of get his feet wet versus, not some, I guess, elite defenses.
Yeah, we got that. That's really, really the easier part of their schedule, but that's now official. We didn't get a corresponding move yet, so we don't know who's going to fill that extra roster spot. That'll probably come.
Won't. Yeah.
That might not even come until Monday. So they're off. They're off until actually I think Tuesday.
Labor Day, yep.
Yeah, so we might not know until Tuesday, but that is the that's what it is. All right, we got like 3 more minutes here, so just drop in the chat and I'll pick off my favorites as they come in. Give me some really bad fantasy football advice for Ryan that he should take.
I'm a one-time winner, and this is the 5th year of the league.
Do we have a team name yet?
I don't. I usually, like, I was team tank last year because I was terrible, so I was tanking.
Okay.
It kind of just comes to me.
So I used to wait because I'd base it on like the players I got, right? Like,
yeah, I do that. Sometimes it's a subtle chirp to a buddy. We'll keep that in house or something like that. But
that too. I might have gotten kicked out of a league for that once. I literally made my team name commissioner's name sucks, and I wasn't back. But I thought it was funny. I normally go with the player. I had Corn on the Shop. I was Corn on the Shop one year.
Matt Schaub. Yeah, he's a decent fantasy guy.
I had him
playing.
I think I drafted him in the last round just so I could make that the name.
Yeah.
No, my ultimate fantasy football story is I never wanted to play. And then in middle school, my friends finally convinced me. And I said, fine, but I'll only draft Patriots or Connor Barth. So I did it. I drafted only Patriots. And that was 2007. And I won. And I said, I'm going out on top.
You won. What year was that? 2007?
2007. I had Brady, Welker, Moss, Welker, Stallworth, Gaffney, Maroney, Falk. Like that, the Patriots, the only one I didn't get, somebody took Gostowski because they knew it would tick me off. So I drafted Connor Barth, who was I think he was with the Bucks at the time.
That's awesome. The one guy that's not is the same last name as you. I love that.
All right. Let's see here. Somebody said draft Deshaun Watson.
I'll pass.
Drew Lock in Seattle.
I was a big Drew Lock guy coming out.
I was too. I think a lot of people want you to draft Kendrick Bourne. That might not be bad advice.
Late round pick, throw him on the bench.
Maybe.
But I'll definitely let it. We'll screen grab it. We'll see how it goes. We'll chat about it. I'm gonna get you into fantasy, not get you playing.
You're not
get you playing, but maybe we'll
Ryan, you're not
talking a little bit. No,
you won't. You won't. Many people have tried. You won't.
Well, I'm still gonna try, Barth. But anyways, that's it. I guess we'll see you. We'll be on more of a regular schedule now going forward. Game day weeks, Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we'll see you guys again on Tuesday. Everybody enjoy your Labor Day weekend. This is the last Sunday without football. I know college starts this weekend. There's some big games on tonight, which is awesome. So football is finally here. Like I said, this is the last Sunday. So enjoy it. It's almost here. And like I said, we'll be more structured in terms of a game week starting next week. So everybody, thanks for listening, and we'll see you on Tuesday.